My fellow Singaporeans, a few days after the recent general elections, data showed massive job losses for Singaporeans in the second quarter of this year. COVID-19 may result in perhaps up to 200,000 retrenchments. Day by day, more and more Singaporeans are losing their jobs. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I have made it a point to travel only by public transport and taxis. And I have heard many heartbreaking stories of how very highly educated and qualified Singaporeans have lost their jobs to foreigners and have had to resort to driving taxis or private hire vehicles to eke out a living. Such jobs, noble though they are not commensurate with the qualifications and abilities of these people. Their standards of living and of their families have taken a massive hit, not to mention the damage done to their psyche and self-esteem. Many of them have never been able to re-enter the mainstream workforce again. The PAP may want to deny this, but the anecdotal evidence and what I have read from the many accounts people have posted on social media and what they have sent in to me have convinced me beyond any reasonable doubt that Singaporeans are indeed having their lunches stolen by foreigners. And one of the reasons for this loss of Singaporean jobs has been SEIKA, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, which Singapore and India signed on the 29th of June 2005. After 13 rounds of negotiations led on the Singapore side by none other than Lim Swee Say, who at that time was the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. For too long, our politicians and the establishment economists have fed us the narrative that any so-called free trade agreement is a win-win for Singapore and leads to the creation of jobs. Our people have been conditioned by the establishment and our 158th ranked mainstream media to think that any agreement with the prefix free trade cannot be questioned. Any attempts to put forward facts which dispute this are brushed aside, and the credibility and sanity of the critics questioned. My friends, for the sake of your own interests and your next generation, I ask you to discard this form of thinking and to examine the evidence and facts carefully. I am confident that if you do so, you may come to a very different and shocking conclusion. When you go to Changi Business Park today, which is a hub for many IT companies and bank data centers such as those of DBS, UOB, and Standard Chartered, you will find that the workers there are overwhelmingly from India, and the great majority are Indian nationals. I'm not a racist, and I have great friends who are Indians, as many of you who are my Indian friends will know. But how can it possibly be that Singaporean workers are in such a minority in this IT and technology hub? There must be something wrong. How is it possible that these sectors are so overwhelmingly dominated by people from a particular foreign country? It is because of treaties such as SEIKA. The most controversial provision in SEIKA is Article 9, which provides for the movement of people between the two countries. In particular, it provides very lax rules for the so-called intra-corporate transfer of employees. Article 9.5 talks about providing a long-term temporary permit to intra-corporate transferees and professionals. You may be wondering how an entry can be simultaneously temporary but yet long-term. Under Annex 9A, there are some 128 different types of professionals. IT professionals, architects, civil engineers, electrical engineers, doctors, biochemists, pharmacists, lecturers, accountants, auditors, financial analysts, psychologists, career advisors, nurses, political scientists, etc. The list goes far beyond just technology and risk management professionals, which Heng Swee Keat claimed recently Singapore was short of. Why are we, for example, allowing in Indian obstetricians and gynecologists or dentists? An intra-corporate transferee can, with 2 extensions, stay up to 8 years before he has to leave our country. And under Article 9.3, such a person shall be exempted from any labour market testing or economic needs testing. That is to say, economic needs testing like the Fair Consideration Framework, which is supposed to ensure fair hiring of Singaporeans, cannot be applied to intra-corporate transferees. Now, PAP ministers like Chan Chun Sing still publicly insist that the Fair Consideration Framework applies to those coming in under SEIKA. That is very misleading, and he should know what Article 9.3 clearly states. To top it all, Article 9.6 even allows the intra-corporate transferees to bring in their spouses or dependents to work. Listen to what 9.6 says. A party shall, upon application, grant the accompanying spouses or dependents of the other party the right to work as managers, executives, or specialists, subject to its relevant licensing, administrative, and registration requirements. In cases where their spouses or dependents are not professionals, they shall be allowed to work in other areas. Such spouses or dependents can apply independently in their own capacity, and not necessarily as accompanying spouses or dependents, and shall not be barred by the party granting them the right to work from taking up employment in a category other than that of managers, executives, or specialists, solely on the ground that they, as the accompanying spouses or dependents, are already employed in its territory as managers, executives, or specialists. My friends, this is quite extraordinary because, as you know, the general rule is that spouses and dependents of foreigners working in the host country are not allowed to obtain employment during their stay. Now, how can any right-thinking person suggest that the spouse or dependent of an intra-corporate transferee getting a job in Singapore does not result in that job being lost to a deserving Singaporean? It is very shocking to me that Parliament did not raise serious questions and objections to SEIKA before it was signed. What were those MPs doing? Sleeping? They were obviously not holding the government of the day to account. And when Parliament is a toothless tiger, Singaporeans lose. My friends, for too long, we have not been given the answers to SEIKA, or we have been given disingenuous answers by the PAP government. A very obvious question which is on many people's minds is, how many PMETs have come over from India since 2005 to work under SEIKA? And how many Singaporeans have gone over to India to work under SEIKA? To date, we have never obtained any answer from the government to this obvious question. Listen to this answer from Lim Swee Say, who was then the Manpower Minister, in response to a question from an opposition NCMP in 2016, who had asked about the number of intra-company transferees from India who had been approved under SEIKA from 2005. Lim Swee Say answered, intra-company transferees, ICTs from any country, including India, would need to meet the ministry's work pass qualifying criteria to work in Singapore. The only difference is that ICTs from all countries are exempted from the advertisement requirement in our jobs bank. The ministry does not disclose data on foreign manpower breakdown by nationality, including data on ICTs. My friends, this was a non-answer. And in November of 2019, Chan Chun Sing claimed that the number of highest skilled jobs in Singapore grew by 400,000 since SEIKA was signed in 2005. That was another disingenuous answer. Was he claiming that SEIKA has created 400,000 PMET jobs for Singaporeans? The fact of the matter is that between 2005 to 2019, the population of our country grew by some 1.434 million people, from 4.266 million in 2005 to 5.7 million in 2019. Now we know that this increase in population of 1.434 million could not have been all native Singaporeans. It was due largely to foreign influx. Many of these 400,000 highly skilled jobs which Chan Chun Sing spoke about would have been created by Singaporean enterprise and other sources, which are not SEIKA related. My friends, this government has never played it straight with Singaporeans on SEIKA. When people have raised questions about SEIKA, their supporters have raised all sorts of facetious arguments, such as xenophobia and racism, to detract from legitimate concerns. Being concerned about one's economic security and that of your next generation has nothing to do with xenophobia or racism. These global elites love the talk of free trade, which is a clever disguise for unfair trade. They will happily disregard the concerns of hardworking Singaporeans trying their mightiest to make ends meet, because for them, the bottom line of their business is all they care about. This is what has gone wrong with globalization, because making the rich richer does not actually make the rest of us richer. Trickle-down economics give the many only the crumbs, if that. It is our patriotic duty as Singaporeans to ensure that our fellow countrymen do not have their lunches stolen, and that they always have priority for jobs. To all the parents who are watching this video, are you willing to see your children, whom you have spent all those years nurturing and all that money educating, play second fiddle to foreigners in their homeland? Are you willing to see them have a lesser future than you? Standing up for their rights has nothing to do with xenophobia or racism. It has everything to do with love for your own and for your own country. It has everything to do with patriotism. We must always ensure that our trade policies work for Singaporeans. We must have trade policies that prioritize the dignity of work for Singaporeans and not make them face the depths of despair by putting them out of work. The loss of personal dignity that comes from the loss of a stable, well-paying job is not something which can be compensated through higher profits for big corporations or a higher GDP. Our trade policies must always be designed to make it possible for most Singaporeans to become middle class through good paying jobs. People's Voice does not see SEIKA as being a fair or balanced worker-focused treaty, and we have been calling for its termination. Many people have asked me the consequences of abolishing or terminating the treaty. The answer is simple. Under Chapter 16 of SEIKA, either party may terminate the agreement by giving the other party 6 months advance notice in writing. There are no penalties or damages to be paid for terminating the agreement. The big corporations and the elites may protest, but I certainly will not weep for them. I will weep for that ordinary Singaporean if this unfair treaty is allowed to continue. In the coming weeks, volunteers from People's Voice will be fanning out throughout the country to collect your signatures. for the petition to abolish SEIKA. Many of you have already expressed your unhappiness about how Singaporeans are being shortchanged under this treaty. You have already taken the important first step, and I now ask you to take the second and to sign this petition to support the cause. There will be a third and fourth step, but we shall announce that when the time comes. My fellow Singaporeans, thank you. So, my friends, what can you do? How can each of you support the #AbolishSEIKA campaign? There are 4 segments to this campaign. Right now, it is time for the petition. We must come together and put our names towards this cause. You have power in your name, and we have incredible power when we assemble our names. Once we have completed the petition, I shall hand deliver it to Parliament. Currently, you can add your name to the petition in 4 ways. 1. Go to my Facebook page and see the pinned post, which is the SEIKA petition. Just add your name to the comment section. Or 2, you can add your name via WhatsApp. Use this QR code or number and send in your name as a new message. 3, you can SMS on this same number. 4, you can email me your name. Please add #AbolishSEIKA as the subject. If you would like to gather names for the petition amongst your own friends, family, and contacts, then please email me for the forms. If you would like to be involved as a volunteer for the campaign, then send me an email with the subject volunteer. The highly paid PAP ministers do not want to abolish SEIKA. That much is clear. It is now in the hands of the Singapore people to do something about it. And we will. Abolish SEIKA.